I want to ask you something, and I want you to answer it honestly, just to yourself. When was the last time you felt like yourself? Not the caregiver version of yourself, not the person managing appointments and medications and phone calls and family dynamics and 100 other things. The version of you that existed before all of this. The one that laughed easily, that slept well, that had things they looked forward to. If you had to think hard to answer that, if the answer is measured on months, or if you honestly cannot remember, I need you to stay with me for this video. Because what I just described has a name. Most caregivers who are in the middle of it do not recognize it as what it is. They think it is just what caregiving feels like. They think if they just push through a little longer, get a little more organized, ask a little less, give a little more, that it'll all work itself out. It will not get better on its own. Not with more pushing, not with more giving. Today, we are talking about caregiver burnout. What it actually is, why it happens, what it looks like and feels like from the inside, and most importantly, how to recognize it before it takes more than you already have. Welcome to Sandwich Generation Life, a channel for adults raising their kids and taking care of their aging parent. Burnout is not the same as having a hard day. It is not being tired after a long week. It is not feeling frustrated after a difficult conversation with a sibling or a care provider. Those things are real and they matter, but they are the normal, expected emotional weather of caregiving. Burnout is different. Burnout is what happens when the demands of caregiving have exceeded the resources available to meet them. Not for a day or a week, but for so long the person doing the caring has been fundamentally depleted. Physically depleted, emotionally depleted, sometimes cognitively depleted, where thinking clearly may feel genuinely hard, a lot harder than it used to be. Herbert Freudenberger, who first described burnout in the 1970s, defined it as a state of mental and physical exhaustion caused by one's professional or personal life. Caregiving burnout applies that framework to an unpaid role that is arguably more demanding than most professional ones. Because unlike a job, you cannot clock out. You cannot call in sick. You cannot decide the work is too hard and give 2 weeks notice. The person you are caring for is your parent, your family, and you love them, which means the demands of caregiving are filtered through love. And love makes it hard to recognize when the person doing the loving has reached their limit. There were nights that I would get at most 2 hours of sleep at a time or less. I would constantly wake up during the night to make sure my parent didn't need anything, or that they were not getting out of the bed on their own to go to the bathroom. I was too afraid they would fall. After this night of spotted sleep, I would get up 6 a.m., get ready for a full days of work, sometimes working on pure adrenaline, but sometimes it felt like my eyelids were being held up by a little toothpick. Burnout is not a character flaw. It is not weakness. It is what happens to people who try too hard for too long without enough support. That distinction matters because the way you feel about your burnout, whether you carry it with shame or with compassion, will determine what you are able to do about it. Before we talk about what burnout looks like, I want to spend a moment on why it happens, because understanding the condition that creates it is part of releasing the self-blame that most caregivers carry. Caregiver burnout does not happen because you made bad choices. It happens because caregiving, particularly in the sandwich generation, creates a perfect storm of conditions that virtually guarantee depletion when left unaddressed. The demands never stop. Unlike almost every other demanding role in life, caregiving has no natural endpoint, no clear boundaries, and no reliable off switch. Medical appointments, medications, emotional support, coordination, decision making, the demands come at any hour and often without warning. And the sandwich generation layer adds another full set of demands on top. Your children, your job, your own health, your marriage or partnership, each of those requires something from you. None of them pause because caregiving had a bad week. The invisible load. Much of what caregivers carry is invisible, not just to the people around them, but to themselves. The mental load of tracking medications, monitoring symptoms, staying on top of insurance paperwork, coordinating with siblings, managing a parent's finances. This cognitive weight is constant and exhausting. And because it lives inside your head rather than a visible action, it is easy to dismiss. You're not just doing caregiving tasks, you're carrying caregiving in your mind every moment. Even when you're not actively doing anything, the worry, the planning, the anticipation is always running. You were not trained for this. Most family caregivers have no formal preparation for the role. They become care coordinators, medication managers, insurance navigators, emotional supports, and sometimes hands on personal care providers with no training, no onboarding, and no manual. And in the meantime, they are expected to maintain every other aspect of their life as all of this is happening. There is no one taking care of the caregiver. In most caregiving arrangements, all of the attention, energy, and care flows toward the person receiving it. But who is asking the caregiver how they are doing? Who is checking whether they have eaten, slept, cried, laughed, or had a moment to themselves this week? Who is making sure that the person who is holding everything together is not quietly falling apart? For most caregivers, the honest answer is almost no one. The absence of anyone genuinely tending to the caregiver is one of the most fundamental contributors to burnout. Let me walk you through what burnout looks like and feels like from the inside. I'm going to describe some things. I want you to notice whether you recognize yourself in any of them. Not all of them, maybe one or two that hit differently than the rest. That recognition, even of just one thing, matters. The physical signs. You are exhausted. Not kind of exhausted that a good night's sleep fixes, the kind that is there when you wake up, that is there when you go to bed, that has become such a constant companion, you have stopped noticing it as a symptom. You get sick more often than you used to. Your immune system, like the rest of you, is running on fumes. You have a headache, you have body aches or tension that lives in your shoulders and jaw. Your body is holding what your mind is trying to process. Your sleep is disrupted. Either you cannot fall asleep because your mind will not stop, or you sleep and still wake up exhausted, or both on different nights. Your eating may change. Maybe you have stopped eating when you are hungry because you forgot, or because there's just simply no time. Maybe you've eaten more because that's a good comfort to you right now. The emotional signs. This is the one that is the hardest to name because caregivers are often people who pride themselves on being emotionally strong, holding it together, being the reliable one. But if you're honest, there may be a flatness underneath the strength, a numbness, like you're going through the motions but not fully present in your own life. You may feel detached from people and things that used to matter to you, less connected to your friends, your partner, your children, not because you love them less, but because there's just nothing left at the end of the day to give. You may feel a low grade resentment that you are ashamed of, resentment toward your parent for needing so much, resentment toward siblings who are not doing their share, resentment toward your own life for looking so different from what you imagined. And under the resentment, guilt for feeling the resentment. It's like a big circle here. You may have lost the ability to feel joy in things that used to bring you joy. The things you look forward to, a hobby, a night out, a quiet Sunday morning, feel distant and almost like it's too much effort. I did feel some resentment as a caregiver. At one point, I was the only sibling caring for my parent. The rest of my siblings were not able to care for them at all. At this point, it had got to the point where I was paying my parents' bills, paying my household bills, and being a caregiver. Free time was a luxury. The cognitive signs. Burnout does something to the way you think. And this one often frightens people because they worry something is medically wrong. You forgot things you normally would not forget. Names, appointments, where you put something 5 minutes ago. Your short term memory feels unreliable in a way it did not before. Making decisions feel harder than it should, even small ones, like what's for dinner? Your decision making capacity has been so taxed by the constant high stakes decisions of caregiving that the ordinary ones feel like more than you can handle. Concentrating is harder. Reading something and finding you have to read it again because none of it landed. Sitting in a conversation and realizing you haven't heard anything that person said. This cognitive fog is not a sign that something is permanently wrong with you. It's a sign that your nervous system has been operating in overdrive for so long that it is struggling to process normally. Then the behavioral signs. You have started withdrawing from friends because you do not have the energy to explain how you are, and the answer to how are you is too complicated. From your own health, you have not been to the doctor for yourself in longer than you should have, from things that used to restore you. You snap at people you love, not because you're angry with them, but because you're running so close to empty that every small demand feels like I just can't give another inch. You may have increased how much you drink, how much you eat, how much you scroll on the phone to find some brief relief. If you have noticed that the care you have provided has started to slip, not because you don't care, but because you have so little left, shortcuts you would not have taken before, patience you can no longer sustain, attention that has frayed. If any of these feel familiar, please do not carry that alone. The next section is for you especially. So, what's the difference between fatigue and burnout? Before we go further, I want to help you understand the difference between the two, because some people mistake the two, because both are real and both matter, but they call for different responses. Caregiver fatigue is the normal exhaustion that comes with a demanding role. It ebbs and flows. It is worse after a hard week and better after a good night's sleep or a day with some help. It lifts when the pressure lifts, even temporarily. Burnout is different. Burnout does not lift with a good night's sleep or a day off. It has become the baseline, the exhaustion, the detachment, the numbness. They are there even when you have easier days. Rest does not restore you the way it used to. Fatigue is weather. Burnout is the climate. If what you are experiencing is fatigue, That is real and it deserves attention. The next video in this series, 5 self-care strategies that actually work for caregivers, will be directly useful to you. If what you are experiencing is burnout, you need more than strategies. You need support, professional support, a therapist, a counselor, a caregiver support group, relief from a form of respite or shared caregiving responsibilities, the honest acknowledgement to yourself and at least one other person of how serious this has become. If caregiver burnout is this serious and this recognizable in retrospect, why do so many caregivers not see it until they're deep in it? A few reasons that are worth naming. It arrives gradually. Burnout does not announce itself. It accumulates month by month, demand by demand. It builds so slowly that each individual increment feels manageable. You do not notice the weight growing heavier because you adjust to each increment as it arrives. It has been building for so long that it feels like you're normal. You have forgotten what it felt like before. Most people who become family caregivers are people who are oriented toward others. They are the ones who show up, who notice when someone needs help, who take responsibility when others step back. Those same traits, the ones that make someone a devoted caregiver, often make them the last person to turn that attention inward, to ask for help, to say, I cannot keep doing this without more support. The guilt gets in the way. Admitting burnout feels like admitting they cannot handle it, like failing the person who needs them, like being ungrateful for still having a parent when so many have already lost theirs. They do not admit it. They push harder. They shame themselves for struggling, and the burnout deepens. I want to say something directly about that guilt. Acknowledging that you are burning out or that you're burnt out is not a failure to your parent. It is the most honest and loving thing you can do for them because a burned out caregiver cannot provide good care. A caregiver who is physically depleted, emotionally empty, and cognitively foggy is providing diminished care, no matter how much love is behind it. Recognizing burnout and doing something about it is how you protect both yourself and the person you're caring for. If you have been nodding along to this video, if you recognize yourself in what I described, I want to give you one thing to hold on to. Recognition is the first act of healing. Most caregivers who are in burnout are so focused on their parents' needs that they have never once named out loud to themselves or to anyone what they actually are going through. Naming it matters. It is not dramatic. It is not giving up. It is the beginning of getting real about what you need. Here is what I want you to do. Not a list of 20 things, just these. Tell one person. Find one person in your life, a friend, a partner, a sibling, a therapist, and tell them a real version. You do not need to have a plan. You do not need to know what help you need. You just need to say, I am not okay. I have been carrying too much for too long, and I need someone to know that. That one act being witnessed in your exhaustion can shift something. Ask for one thing. Think of one specific thing someone else could do that would give you relief. Not a vague request for support, a concrete, specific thing. Could you sit with mom for 3 hours on Saturday so I can sleep? Could you take over the insurance calls next month? Most caregivers resist asking for help because they do not want to burden others. But the people in your life who care about you, they want to help. They often just don't know what to do, what you need specifically. Consider professional support. Caregiver burnout is a real mental health condition and it responds to professional support. A therapist who is experienced with caregiver stress, a caregiver support group, which exists in most communities and online, where the people in the room actually understand what you are going through. This is not a weakness. This is appropriate care for a legitimate health condition. Come back to this channel. The next video in this series is 5 self-care strategies that actually work for sandwich generation caregivers. Not the generic self-care advice that feels impossible when you are this depleted. Real strategies, practical ones, ones that account for the fact that your time and energy are limited. And if you need a place to breathe right now, I have a separate channel called Peace Be the Journey Flow with guided meditations specifically for people who are exhausted and need 5 minutes of stillness. The link is in the description of this video. I want to close with this. You did not choose the role of caregiver because it was easy. You chose it, or you found yourself in it because you love someone. Because showing up for people who matter is part of who you are. That is not nothing. That is everything. But love is not infinite in its capacity to sustain a depleted person. Love is the reason. It is not the fuel. And you need fuel. Recognizing burnout, naming it, taking it seriously, doing something about it is not a betrayal of the person you are caring for. It is the most responsible thing you can do for them. Please take care of yourself. Not when everything settles down, not when things get easier. Now. If this video reached you, please share it. There is a caregiver in your life who may need to hear this today. The one who says they are fine when they are not. The one who has not taken a day off in months. The one who never think to watch a video like this for themselves. Share it with them. Leave a comment below. You do not have to share everything, even just, I needed this today. I read everyone. I will see you in the next video. Oh, and don't forget to like the video. All right, thank you. Have a good one.